things people talk about a desire to be successful, all of the elements.
Good morning, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace dropping in on you. I hope that you guys have had a great week up until this point. There's so many things popping off and so much going on that it can be very difficult to process, extremely overwhelming. But it's important that we maintain our composure, that we maintain our capacity to think critically, that we do not become guided and thrust and driven by emotional reactions and all that's going on, from the COVID uh, pandemic to what's going on in politics to the latest situation between Viacom and Nick Cannon, which I am here to discuss with you this morning in brief. I plan on speaking on this succinctly and then moving forward unless something else changes that demands my personal attention. I think that many have addressed it. I think that some have done an exceptionally great job in illuminating many of the truths. And so I will leave a lot of it to those who have come before me. You know me. Normally I'm in on the back end because I'm looking at it, I'm examining it, I'm thinking on it. I don't approach it from a media or entrepreneurial perspective. In other words, I'm not trying to jump on trends because trends create clicks and shares and likes and things of that nature. I'm trying to gain a sense of truth and strategy and a sense of purpose and direction for what I want to talk about on the topic. So we're going to talk about that this morning. Look, before I get started, we really and truly still need your support. Don't forget, we're in the middle of trying to fund a 15 city tour across the U.S., primarily in highly urban and concentrated areas, to help those communities implement some of the programs that I have created at the Odyssey Project, including the Black Man Lead Rite of Passage Initiative, the Restoring Ghetto's Forgotten Daughters Initiative, which is a passion and concept created by my wife, Marion, who I'm excited to work with and enjoying working with, the Black Empowerment Initiative, the Mental Health Initiative, something we really got to start taking seriously with everything that's going on and some of the numbers that we're seeing rising in the area of depression and suicidal ideation and suicidal attempts. We really truly need to deal with that. Okay, on that note, look, in order to help, just go to the description box or wherever you see this video, and there will be a paragraph at the top of the description box that tells you how to support our work. You can go to the site and see all the work we do, all the resources that we have available, and you can take it from there, or you can give directly through our Cash App account. On that note, I'm about to move forward. Look, for those who don't know, Nick Cannon has for some time been very vocal about issues that plague the black community. He has been very vocal about certain deaths that have come at the hands of police officers. He has had a run in with NBC where he refused to back down on some things he had said concerning some issues and racism, and he was let go from that. He ends up with Viacom, which owns MTV, was it MTV, VH1, CBS, a couple of networks, and he, number one, agreed with some things that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan had to say, but he had a podcast, I'm guessing about a month ago, where he said some things, and those things were construed as being anti-Semitic. And in that, he drew heat, but he refused to back down. Um, and he went on. I haven't heard what was considered to be anti-Semitic. What I can tell you is this: is that um, the LGBTQ community has taken a page out of the book of the Jewish community, in that if you say anything that calls them out, if you disagree with them in any way, they consider that to be, for the Jewish community, anti-Semitic; for the LGBTQ community, uh, homophobic, transphobic, etc. It's a way of forcing people to refrain from pointing out things that should be observed and seen. No group, no race of any point is without fallibility, and it's important that we note that. There are some things that have been done that are absolutely observable and have been recorded in history. The ownership of mainstream media, whether it be news outlets, whether it be movie and film companies in Hollywood, whether it be music companies, that has been owned and controlled by Jews for years. And so, what comes out of that comes out of the ownership of Jews, and Jews should be held accountable for it, specifically in the black community, where there's a lot of negativity perpetuated through these mediums. And I think when you call that out, and who knows, I probably get dinged on this by YouTube. This is not hate speech. This is simply saying what is. And the problem is, we don't have a platform of our own, and that's what I want to talk about. We don't have the expansive platforms we need. We are building alt black media, new black media. We're building our platforms, but most of these platforms are uh, exposed and available on white owned, Jewish owned platforms: Facebook, YouTube, etc., Instagram. And so, what does that mean? That means that they still control what we're able to do, because they can pull us out. We here at the Odyssey Project, Odyssey Media, have experienced that with the taking down of something that we created and nurtured for 10 years and built, for something that we actually didn't do but had no recourse in doing so. So basically, what happened with that was, the overall message was something they didn't like, but I stayed within the guidelines and confines. Finally, when they found something that they thought I stepped out on, they used it to pull. Never had a ding, never had any strikes against me, nothing, but they pulled. And so we had to start over. Look, here's what I'm saying to you. We could talk about Nick Cannon and Viacom. What I'm saying is, I think we should support any brother who stands on what he believes and speaks unapologetically about our reality, and speaks on it from an Afrocentric perspective. I think that's extremely important, that we support him, that we get behind him. For what I understand, and forgive me if I'm a little leery about it, but what I understand, Puffy and Revolt TV have reached out to Nick and said, "Hey, you have a spot here." I hope that's the case, and I hope that it's unfettered, completely free and liberating, and it's not constrictive, and it's not being controlled from behind the scenes by anybody other than uh, Diddy. So that's that. But the problem is, we don't own these platforms. Nick Cannon, while very creative, extremely talented, did not own his platform for his latest show, which was on fire. From everything I hear, I've watched it a couple of times, but my kids can't get enough of Wild and Out. And from what I hear, it was great. I know I talked to my younger brother. He thinks it's cool, being a musician. He thinks it's cool. But it wasn't owned by Nick. It was owned by Viacom. It was put out and presented by a Viacom owned entity, and I believe it's on MTV, if I'm not mistaken. And so you got MTV, BET, and all these other things that are owned by Viacom. It's presented as being black, but it's owned and controlled by an entirely different entity. We've seen this over and over again in the music industry, Universal Music. I mean, we have just had a field day in loving, especially in the early days of hip hop, loving Def Jam. But Def Jam was co-founded by uh, a Jewish person, and almost every CEO and president that preceded and progressed was Jewish owned. So you're talking about Universal Music, Interscope Music, you're talking about Source Magazine, all these things that have been given respect within the confines of the hip hop culture were actually being influenced by an entire different force outside of the culture, and literally over time shifted the culture. You got to think that Jerry Keller is a major part of what we see in the shift of how hip hop influenced the community, from a point of high intellect and high self awareness with groups like the X Clan to uh, gangster rap and the leading into the disrespect and misogynistic lyrics that mishandled and disrespected our women, to the praise and glorification of drug use, to the killing of our fellow brothers and sisters, to just outright violence and a anti-nomanistic type of lifestyle. It all came out of this. These songs, you got to understand something. These songs are approved by the record executives. You can put the music out, but they're going to approve or disapprove of what goes on the album. And when you're being paid more money than you've ever seen before to put the music out, you've got to have a very strong center of self awareness and self identity and self concept to be able to say, I don't care how much money you give me, I'm not going to put that type of music out. But see, by then you signed a contract with them, and they literally control what you can do and what you can't do in the industry because they have you signed to a contract. And you've got to fulfill that contract or buy your way out of that contract before you can even make any other types of moves. And so you're stuck in a situation where if you want to eat the way that you've gotten used to eating, you're going to have to play the way they tell you to play. And this is in no way anti-Semitic. This is simply saying we can see the fruits of their influence in our music, something that is our culture. We can see the influence of how we went from a culture. See, hip hop isn't just about rap music. Hip hop was an extremely broad cultural influence that followed the collapse of the Black Panther Party and the Black Nationalist Party, through COINTELPRO. It was a new introduction into a way and a form of teaching and introducing our history as in a way and a communicating that the average person couldn't understand. We took the English language and we flipped it. We flipped it to make something like bad mean good, something like dope and death have a meaning, things that people couldn't automatically understand. We were fly, we were talking about things on that type of level. And it was a communication mechanism, it was an engaging mechanism, it was an educational instrument. And we were using it. Yes, there were some, where we were talking about how fly we were and all the stuff like that. But it still led to a strong belief of something good about ourselves. It readily, positively impacted our self-concept collectively. And then here comes the external influences that capitalize on our culture. Now you got to understand that our culture has been misappropriated, reappropriated, and mishandled. externally for years. And we have to be the ones who sit up and say no longer. We have to be the ones to recapture what we've created. And the only way that we do that is through ownership. I just posted something that someone I have great respect for, that I consider a colleague and a friend, posted, that simply said, you cannot have what you refuse to build. And that's the thing. We are literally right now, you're watching this on someone else's platform, someone else who can at any time decide that they no longer want to allow me to talk and give my message. And we have to have other outlets. Now, they are out there and we are growing them. The alt black media movement, which my friend Yoda Yora is behind, New Black Media, which includes myself, Professor Black Truth, Jason Black, a number of other individuals who are out there speaking truth, Boyce Watkins, Umar Johnson, a bunch of them. Regardless of how you feel about each one as an individual, they are a part of a new movement that's bringing truth that is Afrocentric in nature and Afro-centered, so that we have our own narrative, that we are writing our own narrative, telling our story our way, that we are protecting that which we as a people created. And so that is something that I really and truly want to push us to be. My thing is, big ups to Nick Cannon for standing your ground. You got to understand, this comes at a time when we've got people backing down. Big ups to my man Steven Jackson, who always holds his ground and speaks the truth, who's under a tremendous amount of pressure now for standing up for Deshaun Jackson. Even after Deshaun Jackson backed down and apologized, Steven Jackson is speaking up for him and standing on him, standing up for him, and standing on what he initially said. It's amazing how it goes when you don't own the platform on which you speak. Something as simple as agreeing with someone else can put you in a place of detriment. When you don't own the platform on which you eat, saying something that in other ways or otherwise upsets those who own the platform can affect how you eat. You have to understand that if I want to consistently eat, I have to create and own the mechanisms on which I provide for myself. That has to be the ultimate goal. It cannot be we become complacent with using Facebook, with using YouTube, with using Twitter, with using Instagram and Pinterest, all of which are owned by entities not of ourselves. We have a responsibility to learn how this game is going to be played and understand the power and the force of media, and why the stranglehold is put on people like Nick Cannon, because the truth, as it seeps into the orifices of culture and society, tend to bring about a different paradigm, a shift in paradigm, a shift in thinkings, a shift in self-concept. There's been so much work that has misdirected blacks. We have had a situation where the entire movement of the hip-hop culture has been usurped and redirected. And when you start to see people who don't want to ride with that, when you want to see people who want substance in their music, substance in their speech, substance in their personality and in their brand, they are targeted and they are brought to heel. We have to be those who, number one, sit up and say, we're going to consistently support you regardless of what platform you're on. If that means we no longer watch BET, we no longer watch MTV, we no longer watch VH1, we no longer watch all these places where they are telling us this is black entertainment, but we start to watch less publicized black-owned media, because that's where we get our truths, that's where we get our freedom, that's where we get the ability to stand up and speak unapologetically about our issues without fear of retribution. That's exactly what we have to do. That is what we have to do. We have to take ownership. I can talk all day about all the things that are going on. I can talk about the minister's speech. I can talk about what Deshaun Jackson said. I can talk about what Nick Cannon said. But at the end of the day, it's about having the freedom to actually do that. It's about having the freedom to actually speak what your beliefs are. Now, again, I'm not about tearing anybody down, but I am about speaking the truth. I am about holding people accountable for the way that they maneuver within the black community. I am about that. I am about sitting up and standing up and saying, hey, look, not on my watch. The thing is, our stomachs control our agendas and our movements and our message. We don't want to upset those who control the mechanisms and the levers and the strings that allow us to eat a little better than the vast majority of us. We don't want to do that. So when we sit up and upset them, we've seen Stephen A. Smith backpedal. We've seen a number of other people, Steve Harvey, backpedal. We've seen how they get in these situations and they choose the money over the truth. And the narrative tends to lean towards that of mainstream rather than the truth. And it's our responsibility to stand up and speak boldly about what is. And that can be done without hate speech. But the truth, we cannot allow the truth in and of itself to be classified as hate speech. But we can only control that when we own our own platforms. On that note, I'm going to get ready to get out of here. Don't forget to support the work we're doing at the Odyssey Project. Go to the description box, look at the paragraph, the first paragraph, and determine how you would like to help us continue to do what we're doing, as well as help us expand our voice, our influence, our ability to educate and empower the masses. On that note, I'm stepping out here. You guys have an unbelievable day. Hello everybody, Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in with a little special announcement. For those who have followed me for any stretch of time, you know, outside of the businesses that I run, like Myriad Business Solutions, the Visionetics Institute, Odyssey Media Group, I also do a great deal of work inside of the inner city communities in Houston, Dallas, and other areas. I'm asking now, as we push a fundraiser, that you support what the Odyssey Project is doing in the inner cities, especially with programs like Black Men Lead, which is a rite of passage initiative, and Restoring Ghetto's Forgotten Daughters, which is a program focused on helping young girls, but boys as well, suffering from childhood sexual abuse, rape, molestation, domestic abuse, absentee fatherhood, and so many other things. The information will be in the box. Thank you.
From a conceptual perspective, people talk about a design of success, all of the elements